And thanks for joining us on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television AIT. Let me welcome you to the signature show this Sunday. My name never changes. It is Mwabuzi Njoko. Now, well, the buzz which our special report of last week has ignited is not about to end. We are still getting comments on that special social report which asked the question, what is wrong with the next woman? Now, Abdurazak Olayode, you said the words justice and equality are two different concepts. Now, in endorsing more than one wife, you said the Quran uses the word justice, but our report used the word equal in describing how a man should love his many wives. This means that if he could treat his many wives justly, he could go ahead and marry them. And Bello Ismail says the Quran tells us, why would you deny yourselves what I made right for you? Bello, as far as this matter goes, you have converted me, and I cast my vote for that Quranic verse. We can go ahead to take as many women as God has made right for us, isn't it? Another woman called in from Abuja, I cannot remember her name now, but she said, Mwabuzi, I enjoyed that program. Thank you very much. Now, away from the special report to the main interview of last week, which was on the move by the federal government to sell its properties to fund part of the 2021 budget. Peter Oje-Ogu, he says, Obasanjo began selling of government properties. Where did that take Nigeria to? The National Assembly members received not less than 13 million naira in a month, and they're not saying anything about it. Meanwhile, Nigeria keeps borrowing and borrowing, and we cannot see anything being achieved with the borrowed money, except, you say, that the money is looted and people in government get richer and richer. Well, meanwhile, I'm sure our colleagues in the presidency, Femi Adesina and Garba Shehu, must be very pleased with the Transparency International report on corruption perception for 2019, which shows that President Muhammadu Buhari has reduced corruption in government. But see, before we start gloating over the report as unbiased and credible, which I can assure you could be, let us take our perspective for this Sunday on the corruption in getting government jobs in Nigeria. It does not apply to the federal government alone, if you ask me. All right?
The challenge that this poses for us as a people and as a country is that you will now have a situation whereby merit will now be sacrificed on the altar of cash and carry, on the altar of naira. And you have a situation whereby people that are duly qualified for a particular job will not have the opportunity to ascend to that job because perhaps they might not know a big man. The defect of corruption in securing jobs in Nigeria is the reason why Nigeria is still underdeveloped and Nigeria is still not having, the right policy execution. We might have the right policy documents, but policy documents without accurate execution matters, will amount to nothing. And so for us, I think the effect is very, very clear to us. It's glaring, it's staring at us on a daily basis because the basic infrastructure that the country deserves to run or requires to run is not available.
The right persons are not being picked for those jobs. So what happened then is that the wrong people are in the system.
Institutional check, which will have come from the legislature, that is the National Assembly for the federal, and the state assemblies for the states, are no longer there. So why nations fail is when you have extractive elitist tendency like we have seen in Nigeria. You are talking of employment, but there are those who are more or less employed one way or the other, or what we call now placement from loose ends. And EFCC and ICPC, like the immigration tragedy we talked about, they didn't go there because it affected men in high places. So when you have such a lopsided society like we are into now, where everybody is on his own, security has collapsed, you cannot think of any institution that is working, then there's a big problem.
But right now, to get federal government work, my brother, hence you don't have that long ahead there, you will not succeed.
It's quite worrisome that we find ourselves in such a situation where government job is not secured based on merit. It's based on who you know. And that has indeed increased the rate of crime in our society.
At this point, I must join other well-meaning Nigerians in congratulating President Muhammadu Buhari for finally appointing new service chiefs. The new service chiefs began their takeover handover last Thursday. In other words, their appointments have taken full effect. But on Friday, President Muhammadu Buhari wrote the Senate seeking the confirmation of his nominees. So what is this country doing? Ridiculing its own constitution? Should the Senate raise any serious issues, like, for instance, unfavorable intelligence reports, like any of the nominees known to have been disloyal to the Nigerian state, or even because of federal character considerations? What will happen? This is the Signature Show on AIT. Now to our interview for this Sunday. Now, you remember 2 weeks ago, we dwelt on the uninformed, not backed by science statement by the Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello that the new Covid-19 vaccine is laced with a disease that will wipe all of us out. Last week, the National Orientation Agency took exception to this misinformation.
Well, as part of this ongoing program, the NOA is telling the public that the vaccines are real, that the government is going to procure these vaccines, and it will be as usual. This is not the first time we are talking about vaccines in Nigeria. You recall that even the polio vaccines, the DTP for children, from date of birth to about a year, we go for such vaccines. So it's not new. So there is a protocol, and we are believing that that same protocol that has been followed in the past will be what is going to happen. Well, you know, as human beings, when something is new, we subject it to a lot of, investigation on our own. These vaccines are things that are scientifically programmed and used. For us as laymen, we can only believe that your country or your government will not go and procure something that will come and kill you. On that strength, we will tell Nigerians that these vaccines are for the common good. And for that reason, we plead to their sensibilities, because it's not forced. Even the vaccine for children that we use today, there used to be an occasion where people will say they will not give their children, they will not take. But when you explain to them, when you convince them, if they find out some truths according to them, you will need to explain why that truth is not a scientific truth, or why that truth is not right. But you cannot say their fears are unfounded. Everybody's fear is founded, because if a man is afraid, it means he's not going to follow you. And so we need to convince them, explain to them based on scientific proofs that this is in their best interest, and believing also that their government will not do anything to jeopardize their own well-being.
That rather short interface with the NOAA director launches our interview with former Minister of Health, Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu, on other issues arising for Nigeria's COVID-19 health and information management. Please stay with us.
Hello and thanks for joining us. Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu was Nigeria's Minister of Health, and he was minister when Nigeria battled and succeeded in containing the Ebola crisis. Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu is our guest today. Professor, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Does it worry you, Professor, that more than 1 year after COVID-19 was detected in Wuhan, China, that COVID-19 is still ravaging the world?
Worry may not be the right word to use. I'm concerned, but I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I'm a student of history, and I do know for sure that with what happened 100 years ago, which we already in history because I didn't live in there, 1918 to 1920, when we had the influenza pandemic, which also ravaged the whole world, and which lasted for 3 years. That anything that actually has a beginning will come to an end. But I'm concerned, I'm anxious because we don't need to lose lives while we're waiting for the pandemic to run its course if we can't do anything about it. So I wouldn't say I'm worried, but I'm certainly concerned and I'm anxious.
When you say while we wait for the pandemic to run its course, or probably a vaccine that protects everyone from it, what should we be doing?
The first thing we should be doing is we want to reduce mortality. We don't want people to die. The second thing is that we want to reduce morbidity. We don't want people to be sick. And the only way we can do it is what has always been known. There's nothing new. The only thing is that technology is much better now than 100 years ago. Our science is definitely much sophisticated and much advanced than 100 years ago. And I'll give you an instance. Prior to 1930, nobody had ever seen the virus. We knew it existed, but nobody had ever seen it because we needed a special microscope. The ordinary light microscope, which had been able to show us what a bacterium looks like, was not good enough to show us what something smaller than a bacterium could be, until the electron microscope in the early 30s was invented, and people could now see what viruses looked like. You look at the computer. The computer wasn't there when we had that last influenza pandemic. It wasn't there. But with the computer now, with the advances in IT, the mathematical modeling that human beings are capable of doing now, that has now helped us in terms of contact tracing, in terms of forecasting. The scientists and the leaders of that time didn't have it. You look at now, we know the structure of the DNA. Before 1950, nobody knew how the DNA looked like, until double helix structure, was eventually reviewed and discovered, for which those scientists won a Nobel Prize. So we're much better, but I think what hasn't much changed is what I call leadership, and of course followership. So if you look at leadership, which to me is the number one factor for any success in any human endeavor, it's always leadership. And I believe now, CNN, for instance, if they are honest to themselves, will not agree with me that leadership is number one priority. I remember when the whole world wanted to know why Nigeria was succeeding with containing Ebola virus disease. And so the media, I became very friendly with the media. They were my friends, both Nigerian media and international media. And I was doing interviews at very odd times
1 a.m., 5 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. because of the time differences across the zones. And I remember that at least I did 3 live interviews with CNN. And that question always cropped up. Mr. Minister, what will you ascribe Nigeria's success to? And I said, in the order of priority, number 1 is leadership. And they never seemed to be pleased, although later I now knew probably why they were not so pleased, because I think at that time the American government wasn't particularly happy with my own boss. And so probably when I said leadership, it was like giving him so much credit. Of course, he had the credit for giving us good leadership at that moment. But leadership was key. And now with what has happened to America, I think everybody agrees now that leadership is number 1. Why? America still has all the institutions, all the world-renowned scientific institutions that actually have been helping the world. CDC played a key role for the world to conquer Ebola virus disease. The same CDC is still in the US. All their institutes are still there. All the world-renowned Nobel Prize winners are still in America. The scientists are there. The pharmaceutical industry, as you know, Pfizer is an American company. Moderna is an American company. They are still there. But why are they the worst of all the countries in the world? Leadership. And I think they've realized it. And with the new leaders now, they are now even looking more hopefully that they may be able to halt it. So leadership is key. Technology comes in science and technology. And all these things. But the only one that I'm not sure whether it keeps improving is leadership.
Do you think that the leaders in Africa, that they have shown leadership at this very auspicious time?
Well, I wouldn't be able to speak so much for that country, but I can say what has happened in Nigeria. The leadership hasn't been what I thought it should be as far as Ebola virus country is concerned. At the micro level, we've seen a lot of good things being done. For instance, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, which I established, has done quite well. I commend the leadership there within what their own mandate is all about. I think they've done so well. Look at how they've upscaled the number of laboratories with the capacity to diagnose viral infections such as we have with the Covid-19 disease. They've done very well. They've been able to produce a lot of tools for disseminating necessary education and enlightenment. Some of them very, very innovative. They've done well. I think others too, now that we're beginning to talk about vaccines, the National Primary Care Development Agency, incidentally, the executive director of the National Primary Care Development Agency was actually the incident manager I appointed to be based in Lagos during the Ebola. So he's used to such fights, and the way he's now handling the issue of getting vaccine within his own mandate, I think it's also quite impressive. But overall, I don't think we've gotten it right in terms of how we have related to the country, how we have tried to enforce the rules. Gradually, our briefings from the PTF is beginning, the Presidential Task Force, beginning to look like what I used to criticize when I got to the Ministry of Health as a new minister. Every Monday during the top management meeting, then we didn't have the NCDC. Like I said, I created the NCDC. But we had the division of epidemiology, the epidemiology division. So they were like doing the work of what NCDC is doing now. And they had a slot at every weekly top management meeting in the Ministry of Health. And during their own slot, they will give us a rundown of the epidemics, the outbreaks that were ravaging the country, like cholera, like Lassa fever, like meningitis, as of the time we are holding discussion. Give us the data, number of positive cases, number of people who have died, and that was all. And after sitting patiently and suffering it for a few weeks, I decided this cannot continue. I had to ask them, what is the essence of this presentation?
I'm giving us the numbers.
Just giving us numbers. I thought there has to be something. If you told us that this week, so and so number of people got infected with Lassa virus, if we are doing something as Ministry of Health, at least in the next 2 weeks, the numbers should change. at least for the better. And I'm not seeing it. If anything, numbers keep escalating, and we just look at the numbers, say, oh, what a bad thing, this country, and then that's all. So I started changing their mindset. I said, no, the purpose of any meeting is to address certain objectives. If a meeting cannot address certain objectives, there's no point wasting anybody's time. And that's when people also started bringing to my attention that, yes, at the time before I came on board, people were thinking of a dedicated parastatal that will handle epidemics. And I said, bring it on. And that's how we now got the president to buy into it. He approved everything I requested. And we were able to establish the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. So we're not doing that yet. We're not doing that. Every time we just listen and as if we are whining, we have a problem. But how have we enforced decisions we have reached? I'm not seeing it happen. People are not wearing masks, even in government establishment.
And that's why I would ask, I mean, you've been minister. You were also minister when there was a big infectious disease challenge. Who should be driving Nigeria's response to the COVID-19 challenge? Is it politicians? Is it the scientists? Because, I mean, if we go back to America, there was that debate about science should lead. Who should be doing it for us in Nigeria?
Science should lead, but it's not the scientists that will drive. There's a subtle difference. The leaders, in this case, the politicians, because we're running civil democracy, the politicians are the leaders today. So the leaders who are no longer playing politics because they've been elected, and once you become elected, you cannot play politics with governance. So you now become a statesperson. So the leaders should drive the process. But their powerhouse are the technocrats, the scientists and the technocrats. But the leaders must show out the way because it's the leaders that have the instruments of enforcement. It's the leaders that have the instruments of financing. It's the leaders that control the regulation for dissemination, for quarantine. Just think of it, the leaders, the government. So they should lead. So rightly so, the present administration has shown that, yes, the leaders should lead. So the president was right when he established the Presidential Task Force, which is a multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary outfit. Perfect. He's right. The only difference between what Goodluck Jonathan did and what is now is that Goodluck Jonathan still set up that kind of coordinating body, which in some case he placed under the Minister of Information, Labran Mako. But it was multi-sectoral. Other ministers, including the Minister of Health and Minister of State for Health, were members. But the powerhouse was the Minister of Health. The powerhouse was the Minister of Health. So when it comes to specific leadership in terms of what needs to be done to contain, it's the health sector. I'm not saying that. The health sector seems to be playing second fiddle now, and it's not right.
You think they've not given the Minister of Health the appropriate powers to combat?
I don't know whether it's the appropriate powers or whether they have not seized it, because sometimes the powers may just be lying there. It's just that you're not going to pick it up. Because nobody, it's not as if President Jonathan said, my presidential committee, this is your work specifically. The job was just to coordinate because there are things that we need to talk about. There was no time the president said, Minister of Health, you must do this. No, he knew if I'm truly his Minister of Health, that's what I should be doing. If I'm not doing it, then he should remove me. That's why he called me to come and work with him and to be his Minister of Health. So the Minister of Health has specific role in terms of leadership, while the presidential team has their role in terms of coordination. But the president too, just like, Jonathan had his own role. The president has a lot of role as the president. At critical moments, he needs to hold certain kinds of meetings and let the world see him holding those meetings. At critical moments, he needs to say something and let the world know he's saying it. It doesn't have to be a formal broadcast. Sometimes it can just be an off-cuff thing. He's coming and journalists, Mr. President, thank you for what you've just launched. But we're also worried about this second wave of COVID. What do you think? And he says something that
and makes a policy statement
and reinforces this, the country that even the president is caring, So everybody has its own role. But I'm not seeing that play out presently. It's as if we've ended with the PTF, and every time the same ritual, and they have a very specific way of presenting. People get bored when they know what to expect. Sometimes it surprises them.
Yes, a lot of people in the newspapers or watching TV and the COVID thing starts, they go to urinate. And then come
Because
back
they know what to expect.
when it's over.
They can ask their colleagues to give us the tape and letter. But my approach was different. I always had a different, refreshing way. I don't start the same way. Sometimes I throw something that will make everybody say, Minister, you're saying this. And that becomes the news. Like in Nigeria, the credit has not been given to me. I don't know why AIT don't want to take the credit. AIT should take the credit. It was through their interview that I raised the controversy, because I remember I was being interviewed, but we used Skype, because they gave me the choice. They said, do you want to come in person or do you want to stay off? I said, well, how do I stay off? They said, Skype. I said, yes, I have Skype. I can go with Skype. That stops me from coming. I'm not sure. They laughed. They said, okay, we can do it for Skype. Over 1 hour. Prime time in the morning. And I raised some controversy, because at that time, the Chinese had started telling the rest of the world, why are people laughing at us? Well, part of the reason why we're conquering this problem is that we have made masks mandatory. We must wear face masks. And the rest of the world, America, WHO, and of course, Nigeria, that's one thing I wasn't doing. Nigeria was always waiting for WHO of America to say something to follow. That's not leadership. If you are convinced, go ahead and do something. So when that interview, I now say that, they say, is there any other thing we're not doing? I said, of course, there's something we're not doing. I've read papers written by Chinese scientists, and I'm convinced what we are saying. I think everybody in Nigeria should be wearing face masks. And the person interviewing me was like, he had to stop me. He said, Honorable Minister, this is going to be very controversial. I said, what do you mean? He said, because right now, NCDC has told us that mask is only for hospital. WHO said masks should be restricted to hospital. Nobody's talking about masking, and you're saying it. I said, I had to say that. I said, did you invite me to talk to you as an expert? I thought you told me you were inviting me as an expert. He laughed. He said, yeah. I said, so I'm talking as an expert. If you want me to just talk as media people, just reporting, I'll report, but I'm talking as an expert. He said, but WHO. And I also made another funny comment. I said, who is WHO? I used to be part of that WHO. And I said, you've heard about the World Health Assembly. The work is done by the technical people, but the approval is by the ministers. World Health Assembly is merely the annual meeting of all the ministers of health of the world. They meet once a year, and that's why it's called the World Health Assembly. And what do they go there to do? All the papers, all the discoveries, all the policy changes that the technical people are proposing, they present it to them. And then they approve. There's politics in it. They approve or disapprove. When they approve, it becomes WHO has said. And that was part of them. So there's nothing about WHO. I'm WHO myself. Maybe I'm retired, but I'm still laughing. Everyone had a good laugh. But because AIT felt that was a big controversy I've raised. And I'm former Minister of Health. I was the one that was minister when Ebola came. This is controversial. So, unknown to me, usually I had a habit of 8 o'clock, I'll tune to AIT News, 9 o'clock, NTA, and then maybe channels or the other people, CTV at 10 o'clock. That's my normal habit. But I don't know what happened to me that day. Maybe because I've been with AIT for so long, so I wasn't bothered about 8. But 8 o'clock, I had my phone. Someone was calling me. He said, Prof, where are you? You have access to TV. I said, I'm in my house. I said, good. Are you not watching AIT? I said, oh, the news. He said, yes, even more important. You are number one. They just read the headline. You're number one. Tune to read. So I have to go to AIT. Sure enough, by then they were not reading. So the former minister has said that all Nigerians must put in masks. They made it number one because they felt it was not only controversial, but it's something different from what everybody was saying. And what happened? 3 to 4 days later, CDC, even though their President Trump, was causing confusion for them, CDC now said they believe now that everybody should be wearing masks. But the president now can say, yes, CDC has said everybody should wear, but if you will like, fine. If you don't, but let's follow what CDC is saying. So people came and nudged me and said, you just said this. I said, yes, because that's the right thing.
That was based on science?
Based on science. A week later, WHO now announced that everybody should put on a mask. A week after Nigeria. So that is what we're not doing. We're not doing it. Part of the thing I did on Ebola is that, yes, we worked with the private sector, but on my own, I set up a body called the Treatment Research Group, 3RG. They had 2 co-chairs. One now is the president of the NMN now, Professor Innocent Uja. But by then, he was the DG of the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. So he was co-chair. And the second co-chair was the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Professor Gamaliel. And then I put all the people, including people like Professor Yu, all the people that I thought would have something to contribute. And as people made suggestions to me, I included their names. And they were meeting. They were coopting even Nigerians abroad who were doing the works in Canada, in USA, and other, in Emory University. Well, Nigerians working there. Why the late Chief Madueko Ojo, who was then our High Commissioner in Canada, was so useful. He always sent me things to read and connect me to Nigerians who in Canada who were into this research, all the medications. And I started exchanging things with them. So we were more original in our approach. And I didn't discount anything, but we needed to follow the process. NAFDAC used to look at any suggestion people will make, anything people say, they look at it. We had different bodies. The ethical committee, health research ethical committee was also involved. We used to consult them. We used to consult NIMA. We consulted everybody that should be consulted. We were all part of it.
So it was a more robust approach.
It was more, and was more important, original. We believed in ourselves. Just the same way that I was the first country, I made it possible for Nigeria to become the first country to include misoprostol, which is used for treating postpartum hemorrhage, in our essential drug list. And the same thing happened when I wanted to do. Someone told me, a professor said, but WHO has not approved. And I said, then that means there's something WHO is going to do for the world. 6 months later, after Nigeria put it, WHO announced, and that's the one the media will prove everywhere, WHO. But people who knew.
It was already on the ground.
Who said, what is all this? Nigeria already had it 6 months ago in their own essential drug list. But WHO did it after us, 6 months after us. So we can be leaders, but we need to have that self-confidence. We can.
And that takes me to the question. I mean, we're talking about Pfizer.
How we fought Ebola was original. Nobody has fought it that way we fought it. That's why WHO was, thrilled. And that's why they praised Nigeria without any reservation. Why? Because we were original. We were doing it the way we understood our socio-economic way, the way Nigerians think. We followed it that way.
And looked at your peculiar challenges.
And the world now copied it. It became the standard of how to fight any epidemic. It became we established standard. Even when I was no longer minister, and there's a group, called Interaction. These are former heads of government, former heads of state, but they select. But first, the first thing that will make you eligible is that you're a former head of state or former head of government. But they still select those they want to put there. Not everybody is still qualified. And the only Nigerian leader who is a member for now is former President Olusegun Obasanjo. So I was no longer minister in 2015, but because they were going for that meeting, and for the first time, they were not going to discuss the Middle East problem or arms race, Russia, US arms race. No. They were going to discuss, because of what has happened with the Ebola crisis, the role in terms of what is public health in terms of global security. It was that Ebola thing opened leaders' eye that security is not only about ammunition, arms and ammunition, that public health issues can become a big public global security like it's doing now. So they didn't invite me to be among the technical people to advise them when they hold their summit. That was in Wales. But he insisted they must invite me. Got in touch with me and said, if I'm free, I said, I'm free. That's how I went to that conference. And in the end, I ended up giving them the keynote address. So when the discussions around my keynote address was there, a professor from Cambridge University, just when he saw intervention, he just said, Professor Chukwu, you have just understated Nigeria's achievement and your achievement in the war against Ebola virus disease. Those of us in the UK know that if we had achieved anything close to what you guys achieved in terms of how you handle public health emergencies, we'll be blowing our trumpet around the whole world and we'll have no apologies for it. Just to underscore that what we did was special. So Nigeria can do it again. We have all the talents. The only thing Nigeria lacks is, starting from our leaders, self-confidence. And
being original.
And being original and believing in the Nigerian dream that if we behave for the good of Nigeria, we can get it right. We are too enamored by things foreign, and that's our problem.
Pfizer, Moderna, and even the ones that are in line to come out with vaccines are all American, European.
Yes. But of course, the Russians have their own.
They have their own. They even came first.
And then even the Indians now say, okay, you may have gone ahead doing more research, but we are the powerhouse when it comes to manufacturing. Now everybody's running to India to please help us manufacture, even Pfizer, everybody, because they have the plants in India.
Yeah. So in Nigeria, why are we not, do we lack the scientists? Do we lack the leadership? Why can't we get in the race for a vaccine that is specific for our own environment?
The government never made effort, but the private sector took it upon themselves and started research since last year. Okay? At least 2 or 3 I've read about who said they've started getting. But in my own case, once I established that group, they were now inviting people. If you think you are doing anything that we can get government to assist you, come and present to us. And people were submitting. No matter how stupid they look, people were submitting. And they were holding and looking at everything. I told them, please, you must have an open mind. Nobody knows where this salvation will come from. So have an open mind. We need to reintroduce that. The government must go out of its way. I would have been happier in one of these PTF meetings. They bring these guys with them and say, please talk to Nigerians. And say, actually, since March, in our laboratory, somewhere maybe in Osun State, we have been working on this together, and this is where we are. Now we're happy. Government said they're going to give us money. We're going to work with all of them, NAFDAC, NIPRI, to want to start clinical trials. That is news for the media. Different from what they've been hearing. Can they do that? We need to be original. That's the only way. We need to shock the world.
In Nigeria, there's this confusion between malaria symptoms and COVID-19 symptoms. A good number of Nigerians have been tested and told that they are COVID-19 positive. And all they take is anti-malaria and they get better, leading a lot of them to doubt the authenticity of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Is it not possible that, just like you talked about during Ebola, where you tried to be original, that our scientists had a more finite test that can differentiate between malaria symptoms and COVID-19 symptoms?
They already have. The only thing, you know where the problem is? Like we always joke, but it's true. The coronavirus is a more intelligent virus than the Ebola virus disease one. The Ebola virus wasn't as intelligent as this virus. Do you know why I say that? A businessman who supports measures that will kill their customer is not an intelligent businessman. You need your customers to be alive so that you can keep trading with them. Ebola virus will kill 50% of anybody it comes in contact with. So if the person is dead, will he still continue? He still will go. He will be buried. But the coronavirus said, no, these people need to be alive so I can be propagated. So it doesn't kill more than maybe 5%. In some countries, even less than 5%. Certainly not up to 10% anywhere. So that's where the confusion is, because mortality for Ebola is like 50-50 chance. So it frightened the hell out of everybody. We already have a test for COVID test. What else do you want? You have fever. And the doctor thinks it's also possible you could have coronavirus disease. So fine. He tests for COVID and it's positive and you are still arguing. What else do you want the doctor to do?
No, but people take, I have friends, I have relations who came down with COVID positive, and the only medication they took was anti-malaria.
No. The anti-malaria they took is just what we call a red herring. Something that happens by chance and it's
No, but they didn't come down with they didn't come down with
That is the point I'm making to you. I thought you should have asked me why, how come, what is the reason why this thing doesn't kill everybody unlike Ebola? That's the difference.
I'm asking the question now.
Yes, that's the difference. Now the difference is such that unless you have certain disadvantages in you, the COVID-19 as a disease, the virus itself, does not really completely overwhelm your natural immunity. So there are many people who have never taken anything, and yet they were positive for COVID and they survived it. Even families will tell you where a young man or young woman who is in the university gets it because they go to parties, gets infected, and comes home, traces to the old father who is over 50 years and the mom who is over 50 years. The mom and the dad get admitted in hospital for active COVID disease, and she stays at home. She's positive, but nothing. If not that she's positive and she's now being restrained, nothing is happening to her. She doesn't take anything really. So that's the thing. So that you now decided to take medicine for typhoid or for malaria or for meningitis, it's just a red herring. If you, in fact, even if you didn't take anything, nothing will have happened to you. Because you are lucky. You still have good immunity. You are strong. You are young. You are not diabetic. You are not hypertensive. You don't have any respiratory problem like asthma. You don't have any cancer. And the natural protection God has put in us has protected you, and you are making noise. But what happened to your granddad? What happened to your dad or elder brother?
And it was the same strain.
It was the
same
strain.
infection.
Are you so selfish not to ask questions? So that's what I feel the message has to be rubbed in, not only once. I think PTF did it once or twice, but it has to be an ongoing thing that, look, young people will bow for you, will respect you, will salute you, will throw away salute. But please, even though you may not come down with it, but you are even the one likely to bring it, you are the one that will travel more. You travel to Europe, you travel to America, you are the one that will come back more with it. But remember that you have elder brothers, elder sisters, aunts, uncles, dads who are still alive, mothers who are still alive, old people around you. Please, they may not be able to. That your young sister who is diabetic, if you give it to her, yes, she's young, but she may not survive it. Please, for their sake, can we cooperate? Give them that kind of message. Let them be your people spreading it and say, okay, if not for you, Dad, I would have been going, but I've stopped going to party because of you, Dad. It's not because of me. I can go to the nightclub, Dad, it's because of you. Yes, we agree.
So people can be more circumspect.
So the message
more
also,
responsible.
We need to change it. But until then, the fact that more than 90% of people survive it will keep making the whole world, not only in Nigeria, be very skeptical. And that's what keeps them alive, to be spewing conspiracy theories. Why, during Ebola, why didn't they spew? Because you know it's a 50-50 chance. Are you not afraid of Ebola to be talking about 5G there or 4G there? But this one gives you time to be playing on social media.
Because I've heard people say things like COVID, malaria, COVID.
So another approach is that during this weekly, of course, I had to tell them that this thing people are doing daily is removing the cell from. Even during Ebola, as bad as Ebola, I wasn't doing it every day.
If there was a need.
Yes, once something becomes every day, people begin to take it as ordinary. But the way I do it my own is that the whole media, the place couldn't contain them because they look for what. If I like, when in there, they will start calling my media person. When is the minister not talking again? When is in there? So it's something you look forward to. But when it becomes every day, like you say, human beings after once becomes ordinary. If you start coming every day to interview me, after some time, you will even give you a problem. I will not keep it. But this one, I remember, we agreed on this time, must be there in time. So it's always good to also make something for people to look for it. Now, for instance, what stops them from coming to tell us that we respect people's privacy, so we will not call names. Like I wasn't calling names. But the media used to go and use their own different names and get the name. But when they ask me, I say, I will not confirm. I only told you it's a doctor. So if you go and find them, it's up to you. But I will not give you the name unless the family says I should give the name. But I've told you it's a medical doctor that died. What stops PTA once in a while telling us that even in Abuja here, last night, we lost a professor of pediatrics. One of our best professors. but we will not call names. We lost one of our good businessmen. You see, once you start beginning to come near, people start shivering. Wow. But as soon as you keep telling them that in Abuja, 2 people died. So what? It's the first time 2 people are dying in Abuja. They may have died of natural causes. Can't someone who is 100 years die? In Lagos, 3 people died. Tell them that someone who just wedded last week, instead of being honeymoon, just died. Things that don't touch even the young people.
The human angle.
I'm good. Bring it home. I'm not seeing it. That's the way I communicate to people. I'll bring it home. So many journalists, so many media people have gotten it. Some survived, some didn't. Why can't we even talk about it? Don't call their name. Just say that one of our best journalists just passed on. Bring it home.
Some more graphic details.
Yeah, that will now push the media to even go and be searching for them. Leave them, but you've made the point. You've made the point.
There was something you said about security and our, belief that security is only guns and machetes and all that. A lot of scholars say that, like anything else, that COVID-19 has really shown that we have a globalized world that share the same concerns, that have no boundaries, and to some extent, that the world should cooperate more when challenges like this come. Is it something you share too?
I've always shared that. I remember in that 2014, of course, Nigeria was a big star at the United Nations General Assembly. And we were all walking tall. Every Nigerian was walking tall in September 2015 in New York. And everybody wanted to speak with my president, Goodluck Jonathan. Everybody, it was hotcake because Nigeria was being celebrated by everybody in the world. Even me, as his minister, I couldn't rest. Every news media outlet in US wanted to have an interview with me. I disappointed you because I also had to do some work. We all stars. Even some of these, prestigious American bodies, businessmen, they invited me to their meetings to come out because it was affecting their business. So they wanted to hear what we can do to curtail this Ebola that was spreading. Now, why am I recalling that United Nations General Assembly in 2014? Why am I recalling it? Because the world said, under the auspices of the United Nations, that we should raise money under the umbrella of the United Nations to support the work being done for Ebola virus disease in West Africa. And I was representing, President Obama actually addressed that meeting, but many presidents were there, but for one reason or the other, for that engagements he had, President Jonathan couldn't, so he said I should represent him. So there was also another minister, but he was Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was also from a country in South America, who was representing his own president. So every country will stand up and pledge what they should do, what they can do, whether in kind, technical assistance, or in cash, terms of donating money. And then this foreign minister from this South American country now stands up when it was his turn, and they are announcing something that was a pittance in dollar terms, because it was actually less than $50,000. And then insulted that, well, we know that Ebola is not their problem, really. Yes, but since the world is contributing money, they have to support. It's not going to affect them. So luckily, he made it before it was my own turn. So it was my turn. I said that my colleague who made that statement is very unfortunate. As long as, even if it's in the Sahara Desert, that one person in the whole world has Ebola virus disease, the world is not free. Everyone was clapping. And I explained it to them. Nobody is free. So it's the interest of anybody living in any part of this world. And even now that we do space travel, even those living in the moon, who knows? It's even in their interest that because we may take it there to them. Everyone had a laugh. And everybody agreed with what I was saying. He felt ashamed of himself. So it has to be. It's a global village. Anything that affects any country anywhere in the world today, invariably, look at the travels. After all, Nigeria didn't have coronavirus problem until someone brought it to us, who came back from Italy. He brought it. And part of the problem why the the thing is getting in Nigeria because we travel a lot. We travel a lot. And because our leaders are the ones who travel more, they don't want to be too stringent on travel. If it were poor people who were traveling, by now they were saying nobody should be passing through the airport. But of course, they travel more, so it's actually a step, which is again where I come that sometimes as leaders, we may also have to bury sometimes our own interest, for the good of the whole country. And then you can even see a few people who are in leadership positions today, or even their husbands are in leadership position. Yes, you have inherent, intrinsic human rights, your own basic human right, to go to any corner of the world and get anything. But don't rub it in the face when you're a leader. Someone like me, if for any reason, I find myself in UK, and they say, okay, because of your age, because of blah, 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 you should also go and get this vaccine. And I get the vaccine, I will not make a video of it. Because it will be insulting to our people. Up till now, Nigerians are not even sure when they will get the vaccine. And then I'll get it in another country, when I'm part of the leadership of this country, and I'll be flaunting it. Are we crazy? That means I don't have any emotional intelligence. I don't have a social intelligence. Are we crazy? You are rubbing it in the face of your own people who you are supposed to have provided that.
Provided it for.
That we're sorry, you can't afford to travel. So otherwise, but I have it.
And then you can, as a leader, you can as well not care about what happens here.
So, as long as one person has it, the whole world is not protected. And that's the truth. We have seen it. It started in China. Before you know it, because of travel, it went around the whole world.
And Trump used to call it the China virus.
He didn't provide leadership. He didn't provide leadership.
Let's conclude this conversation. A lot of Nigerians are concerned, worried, troubled that the enthusiasm with which the NCDC, the PTF managed the first wave, they've lost it. A lot of people are diagnosed with COVID-19 positive results. And for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, nobody contacts them, no guidance, no contact tracing, and nothing. Is that the way, is there a lethargy? Is there
Yeah, you use the right word. There's a bit of lethargy, I think, both on the side of the people themselves. When human beings when something drags for too long, they become complacent. In anything, it's normal. It's not unique to Nigerians. But it's the duty of the leaders to continue to reawaken our interests, rearouse our interests. That's the function of leadership. But as human beings, it's normal that after some time we get used to something. Just like most Nigerians have gotten inured to the idea that bandits are killing people. When you hear that 2 people were killed, it's like it doesn't move people anymore.
it happened yesterday.
Can you imagine? How did we get there? Because we have made it look like now normal. It's only when it's now more than 100 that we wake up. But our people say, only 2, only 5, and that means it's no problem. And we walk around. So that's our behavior as human beings. But that's where leadership comes in. So when leadership also gets into that kind of mode, then it's disaster for everybody. In other countries, yes, the people behave the same way, but good leadership have not gone to. That's why in Britain, despite the fact that because of the issue of protecting livelihoods and all that, the Prime Minister of UK was so reluctant to do another lockdown. But when he knew, based on science, he couldn't help it, at least to reduce this thing, he had to do it.
Talking about the UK strain that was just discovered in Nigeria, how should our government react? How should our...
Well, for the same reason we did not call it in the China virus, I do want to call it UK strain, because I think the world is now saying, yes, we are sorry. In the past, the way we named diseases like Ebola, like Lassa, we named them after localities. It is wrong. So with coronavirus, the world is like repenting that no more, we will not do that. Let's give it a neutral name. So because of that, like in 1980, it was called the Spanish flu, but this one is not China flu. It's not called the China virus.
It's not UK strain.
And it's not UK strain. But the first place where people are, it could have been in any country, but we don't have the scientific entrepreneurial wherewithal to have identified it. But at least the British people had a scientific wherewithal to identify it first. So it was first identified in the UK, this new strain. For me, I don't see why we should, I think, make so much noise about it. Yes, the question now is, initially the question was that, oh, it's now more effective, but not more deadly than the classical one. Now people are now saying that it seems that it's not only more infectious and effective, but it's also more dangerous. It causes more, kills faster. Those things are not important. We should leave it to the scientists. It should just draw the attention to the scientists that more needs to be done. But for the people, what concerns the people, follow the rules. And you know what, the whole thing that baffles me about the human being, the same people who say we don't believe there's anything like coronavirus, just tell them that, well, last week you went to hospital and the doctor in investigating you also tested you for COVID and found that you are positive. Just watch their reaction. The same people who said they don't believe in it. Before you complete your story, they've abandoned you. You're even calling with your mobile. It's as if you transmit it through your mobile phone. They're even reluctant to even pick your call. They'll just say, stay away until further notice. But you say you didn't believe in it. If truly you didn't believe in it, so why that kind of ostracization that goes with it? Just tell anybody that this guy has recovered. He was treated in Wagulada for COVID-19. And see how people react. The same people who refuse to wear masks. The same people who refuse to do all the things that we've said. So there's a problem somewhere. There's something the government needs to now look at in terms of communication and say, okay, that's all these social. They can even invite the media people who are experts in communication and say, this is what it is, but how do we communicate this? And Nigerians are very intelligent. You find brilliant people who propose ways that they will rub it in, and you see Nigerians come up again and follow all the rules. It is possible.
Thank you, sir, for
Thank
your
you very
time
much.
and for your
Thanks for having me.
for your depth and for the experiences that you shared with us.
Thank you.
I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Thanks for watching.